Hi and welcome to the latest episode of Pat's Procrastination, brought to you by the Pat's Propaganda YouTube channel. Welcome into episode 17, folks. Your co-hosts today, as usual, Clazzy Clare and Chudders. So let's get started. There's a lot to talk about. It's all very interesting and very exciting. So do ensure that you are subscribing to that YouTube channel to ensure that you do not miss an episode of this. So let's just dive right in, Chudders. How's it going?
Welcome to the Mayo era, the Mayo dynasty.
That's it.
It's exciting times. It's an interesting hire. It's probably not a great surprise to most Pats fans what's happened. Maybe not what everyone wanted, but not a massive surprise. What were your thoughts when you saw the announcement, Claire?
Initially, prior to the presser, I was, I don't know if I was mildly surprised. Was like, no, probably not actually, because he had announced it like the year prior. So we sort of shouldn't be surprised because we already knew who it was going to be. So for anybody that was surprised, it was like, well, yeah, he kind of told you last year that it was going to be him. So, and as he mentioned, as Kraft mentioned in the presser that I know that we'll talk about that went on yesterday, that's why we're doing the show today, so that we could comment on things like that. Kraft is very much from within the family, from within the organisation. And I thought that was really interesting because Bill Belichick got a lot of shade for always hiring his guys. And now Robert Kraft has declared that he kind of always hires his guys. So I found that really interesting, a very interesting tidbit of information. So there's I think there's going to be a lot of that. Was it Kraft, was it Bill thing? And we're never going to know, obviously. And the presser that we had isn't really going to tell us anything more anyway. But to go back to your original topic, yeah, I think maybe, I don't know. I don't know how surprised. I think I was still shocked that Bill went. I think because there was that part of me that thought he wasn't going to go. So I don't know if I had much surprise because there was still the undertone of shock for me. So he says a lot of good things. He says a lot of, as a fan, I'm not sure how I feel about some of the things that he says. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I just mean that in a fan way of how he's going to run things, that kind of thing. So it is interesting. Like you said, interesting times. It looks like we're in for some changes. Even though they're promoting within, but there's going to be lots of changes. So it's a very interesting time to be observing the organisation, I suppose. As a fan, there's that element of emotional. So I'm sure it must be very interesting for fans of other teams to just sit back and watch. But when you're sort of in it, if you like being a fan, it is a bit different. So yeah, just a lot to sort of wait and see for, really. How about you?
So, well, the question I have for you: when we last recorded, it was just after Bill had gone, and the episode was obviously focused more on that than too much looking at the future. When I did ask about looking at the future, you weren't sure exactly what you wanted. You didn't have long between when we recorded that show and when the news was announced. But do you feel, is this the direction you wanted the Pats to go in? Do you feel excited, pleased, positive? Do you feel like, I'm not so sure, I think we should have done maybe something else? What's your sort of thoughts on the direction they've chosen to go in?
The fact that they didn't interview anyone else, I don't know if that's what you're alluding to as well, didn't really bother me. I can't say it really affected me. I think the thing more so that is something that is concerning me as a fan at the moment, maybe more so, is less the hiring of Jerod Mayo. I'm quite excited, looking forward to seeing what he can do. I like how a lot of the players, he's someone that a lot of the players respect. And I think that's a really good precedent that he's walking into a building with respect already there, because following the individual that he's had to follow by Bill Belichick, I can imagine that would have been a very, very difficult job for a complete outsider. And maybe that's why they've looked at doing what they've done, because they basically realised that who was going to follow possibly the greatest coach of all time needed somebody who could cope with sort of the pressure of that, cope with all the magnitude that would bring with it. So I think from bringing him in that respect, indicates a good thing. With regards to they didn't look elsewhere. Yeah, wasn't too fussed, as I said. I got a little bit off track. The thing that concerns me more is what's going to happen in the behind the scenes roles, the GM, the scouting, the drafting. At the moment, as we look forward to the draft, to the combine, to the draft, those are our next things. Those are the scuttable that everybody's talking about. Is that third place draft pick? So you did it again. How important that is, and how so many people want a quarterback and that kind of thing. As we look at that, who makes those decisions, who they've got in the organisation that's going to deal with that, for me, feels so imperative right now. And as a fan, obviously, I haven't been a fan for a significantly long period of time. I'm not in the double digits as of yet. So I'm still growing as a fan, getting used to the organisation, getting used to sort of all the different things and the histories and everything. But it feels to me right now so big a deal if they just ride it out with the same people, because fan base, Pats Nation, whatever you want to call it, has talked so much about how bad the drafting has been recently. And if they've kept all the, now I know a lot of people say, oh, it's all up to Bill. I'm not quite a believer of it's just all up to him. I may be proven wrong this year, so that's all fine and dandy. I'm not fussed. But if they stay the same with that department, if you like, with who makes those decisions, if that's all exactly the same, that's what has me concerned, worried. I'm not concerned about Jerod Mayo. I'm happy that he's there. I'm excited to see what he can do. It's that other side that I've got a concern about at the moment. Even the drafting, even his opinions of the draft. He's a new guy, so we know it's going to be an essence of difference anyway. It's that behind the scenes, or whatever you want to call it, not to repeat myself, that's got me a little bit worried. And that's what I'm waiting to find out, if we will even find it out. Those people who are doing that draft or doing the picks or whatever you want to call it, are they different, or have they got a different mantra and different things? That I want that to be different, so I'm concerned if it's not. Sorry, long-winded. Did that answer your question? Apologies.
Very long-winded.
Sorry.
I'm slightly avoiding the question of whether you wanted Mayo or not, but
yeah, that's fine. I'm happy that we've got Mayo.
I get what you're saying about the GM, and I share quite a similar sentiment. I'll just rewind slightly and give my take on the Mayo hiring. My choice number one, this time last week, my choice number one was someone like Ben Johnson, a new young offensive whiz kid geek that was going to revolutionise the offense. When Vrabel got fired, choice number two was probably Vrabel. Mayo was a third. So I'm not going to pretend and call that back and say, oh, this is what I loved at the time, because it's not. That's the way I thought the Pats should go. Now, Mayo gets announced. There's, as I'm sure most of the fans, viewers, listeners of this will have done the same, will have consumed a lot of media over the last week, looking at the analysis of Mayo coming in, of Bill going out, of Kraft's working decision-making, of everything that's been going on in Patsland the past 7-8 days. I'm now 100% on board that Mayo was the right decision. And that's because there was a realization that this is, and it should have been obvious, but this is succeeding the greatest dynasty in American football, any team, not just the Patriots, that there's ever been. You only get one chance to succeed that. You got many chances to change it, but you only got one chance to succeed it. And it appears that the decision that the Crafts took was to try and provide as much continuity, smoothness in that transition as possible by, as you said, hiring from within, of growing an internal candidate, grooming up for the role, promising it ahead of time, and then executing with the plan that they'd made a year or more ago to do so, to try and provide some continuity from the greatest era. Now, this is not me saying that is the best solution, and it's definitely going to work to make the Patriots successful again. But I think it's the logical best thing to try, because you can try that. It can fail. In 3 years, we could be no better than we are now. We decided to draft a quarterback this year that completely failed, just as Matt Jones did. We didn't get him enough protection, whatever. And in 3 years' time, we're in the same position, drafting high, no real free agents that we're going to stick around, and we're looking at a new coach, and it's failed. And at that point, you then need to start going in completely different directions. You need to try. There'll always be the opportunity to rebrand, to retry in a new direction. There will only ever be one opportunity of continuity from the Bill Belichick era. Because if you'd have gone a Ben Johnson route, as an example, and that had failed in 3 years, there's no way to wind it back and go, oh, hang on. We should have continued from Bill. Let's try Vrabel now. Let's try Mayo now. You may have gone similar, but you're not having the continuity from the Belichick era. So there's only one chance to try that. So that's why I'm 100% behind. This is the logical best attempt to be making now. Not to say it'll be successful. I can see completely why it was the right decision to be trying that now. Now, the other aspect to that intrigues me is whether whether Kraft has tried this before with McDaniels, because when McDaniels was going to go to Indy, and this is what, 6 years ago now, 5 years ago, something like that. He interviewed for Indy, and by all accounts, he was about to accept the Indy job to be head coach of the Colts. And on the plane ride, he was convinced, no, stay with the Patriots. We'll give you a bump in pay. At the time, there was a sort of understanding in the media that Bill was going to open up his world to Josh to really let him look behind the scenes and learn everything about the role. And he was going to get a more elevated status within the Patriots. All that were incentives for him to stay with the Pats. I just wonder whether this similar clause that was written into Mayo's contract of you can continue on to become head coach when Bill leaves, whether that same language, that same plan was in place for Josh when that happened 5-6 years ago. It then got screwed up, thrown in the bin when he went to the Raiders. Maybe because he got the idea of, you know what, I stuck around for that, but 2-3 years later, Bill's not going anywhere, and he probably won't be for another couple of years. I need to go do my own thing somewhere else. I just wonder whether this is something they've actually been trying to do for a long time, and maybe since they had the example on the field with Garoppolo leaving, and they thought we didn't have a proper succession plan in place there, we're definitely going to do it for Bill.
Well, question. I had a couple of questions from what you said, and really well put. Did you agree with the Crafts announcing Mayo as the next head coach last year, though? I don't mean to him. That's fine. You know, what's behind closed doors is different, to get him to stay, that kind of thing. But publicly announcing it, do you think it was a good or bad idea with Bill Belichick still standing there?
Do you mean publicly or internally? Because I think...
No, the publicly thing. That's what I mean.
Because I think he knew
announced
he would have known internally. My assumption is he would have known internally, even if they hadn't announced it publicly. He would have had an idea of the contract talks that would have gone on with his own staff, essentially, because he was GM. He wasn't just head coach. He was GM. I'd be very surprised if Kraft had secret meetings with Mayo to say, we'll get you a new contract and we're going to write in this clause, don't tell Bill about it. Like, I can't believe Bill didn't know. I'm in some ways surprised that they did it quite as publicly as they did. I'm surprised in some ways they did it at all, because like you said, and like people have been asking, there's surely a benefit to seeing what's out there, whether that was last year and seeing what's out there.
When did I say that?
I'm complimenting your point. Don't question it. Maybe you didn't. I'll retract that compliment then. But
don't credit where it's not due.
On reviewing the available options, they didn't do that. They shut themselves off. They decided their path in advance, and they've gone maybe a year or two ahead of what they'd originally planned, but they're executing a plan they made without necessarily looking at their entire options. Now, the way Kraft spoke yesterday seemed to suggest that that's what they deliberately wanted to do, because they like the continuity, they like the building within. They probably really like Mayo. Like, it's not just
Yeah.
they like the idea of promoting within. Mayo's probably our best option for within.
No.
My assumption is, from what they've seen, they genuinely think this is the best option for the New England Patriots. Yeah. And we only really got our first true glimpse of it yesterday, although that was along similar lines of the interviews he'd done previously at the end of the season. But now we'll actually get to see what sort of leader Mayo is. And it's certainly, there's some similarities. There's quite a few differences to the way the last head coach ran things. We will now see how strong a leader to me, he appears a very strong leader. The questions I have are whether he has the tactical genius that's needed by any head coach to win football games in the NFL, which by all accounts, he was a key component of the defense. I'm not saying he didn't have it. He was a very smart player. I'm not saying he can't do it, but those are the elements we have to go see now. We also need to see that he is, whilst he appears to be a sort of inspirational leader, is he a strong leader in adversity? Does he take responsibility when they lose a couple of games? Is he able to turn a underperforming player around and convince them to give their everything to buy into his method? Is he able to draw big players? We're going to see it in free agency. Is he able, I'm not necessarily saying this is who they are going to get, but is he, for example, able to go to a Mike Evans or a T. Higgins and persuade him this is where they need to revolutionize their career? This is where they now need to make a path. And not just, it will be partially, but not just, here's the number of zeros on the the offer we're making to you across the table, which will play a big part in signing free agents. But can you also get people to buy into his ethos? They're not just coming here for the money. They're coming because they see it as the right way to be. And he seems that sort of person. We'll obviously need to see the evidence of that.
Yeah. One thing that I want to touch on before we talk about the presser, because as I know that there's some quotes that you found interesting, and there were certainly some pieces that I found interesting. So that's why we're doing the show today after the press conference, to bring you some of the information. The one thing that happened just after the press conference was that the Crafts promoted Kraft Group executive Robin Glazer as team's new executive vice president of football business and senior advisor to the head coach. Now, she's been a senior executive with Kraft Group since 2007. She recently served as the team's senior vice president of business affairs and chief administrative and compliance officer. So obviously she's been in the building. And during her 17-year tenure with the Kraft organization, she's reported directly to Robert and Jonathan. So a new movement of the family again, someone promoted within to serve as senior vice president executive vice president, apologies, of football business and senior advisor to head coach. Did you have any reaction to that at all? Now, bearing in mind, you don't have to have. This isn't trying to put you on the spot. I saw that and kind of went, okay, because it doesn't really give us what she did do and what she's going to do, but we shall see.
It seemed to back up what the impression that we're getting and what was said in the press conference, in as much as it appears that they are not going down a traditional route that maybe a lot of fans want of, here is a GM. Here is, you've got Mayo on the football side, and you've got a GM here who's in charge of personnel and nominating this, one of them, whoever it is, Mayo or GM, this is the person that's now going to be in charge of building the roster. This is the person that's going to be in charge of coaching the roster. That sort of two-headed beast doesn't appear to be in place. They appear to be constructing a consortium of football intellects, a council, to run the football side. So it's not to speak of Robin's not qualified or that I'm not trying to talk her achievements down, but what it does appear is that they're getting a lot of big heads around the table to make the big decisions for the Patriots, and this is the latest appointment along those lines. Elliot Wolf and Matt Grow are obviously other ones that have already been there providing that continuity. They've been spoken of quite highly in their roles. And there is maybe a hope more than necessarily understanding. There's a hope that they were suppressed by Bill and that their opinions were listened to, but maybe not completely followed because Bill had other ideas of what he wanted to do. In the end, is the thought of maybe, okay, now they have a bit more freedom. Now they are able to influence things in the way that their expertise seems to suggest that they could in a positive manner. The fear I have is by having such a council round a table, to be very simple, when it gets to the third round pick, one of them might say, right, I want a quarterback. One might say, I want a tackle. And one might say, oh, I want MHJ, I want a receiver. And it's not to say that any of them are right or wrong. They've all got different opinions. But who's going to be the one person that puts the fist down and says, no, this is what we're going to do? And that's where the questions got to it yesterday, is that there's a fear that there isn't that direct leadership and essentially there isn't that accountability. Because if you get to that position in the council, then I could see it quite quickly breaking down, because however they manage to get to that final decision, whether it's one person that says, okay, I'm putting my foot down, we're getting Jane Daniels. If Jane Daniels doesn't work out, then you'll start hearing, as we have done the past few years, of Matt Grow in the backhand press saying, well, I didn't want him, I wanted MHJ. And Joe Alt goes on to be a brilliant tackle for the Jets. And someone else says, well, I wanted Joe Alt, I didn't want Daniels in the first place. And I was suppressed under Bill, I'm still now suppressed under Mayo, or whoever is making that final choice. That's the fear. You have one person in my mind, and they are accountable. They're making the decisions, which is what we've just got to with Bill.
I was going to say, that sounds like exactly what people have been not you, but people have been complaining about is Bill's got too much power. Bill makes too many decisions. So now you're looking at let me finish. You're looking at it as in, okay, there's a council of it. So we won't have the one individual maybe to make the decision. And it's like, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't.
I don't think the problem was that Bill had too much power.
Oh, no, I didn't think you did. I'm just,
I think that it's because it started going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
It was not successful. The draft picks they were making, and apologies, I'm going to bring it up, trading down twice and taking Cole Strange. That you look at the draft classes, how successful they've been the past few years, and by all accounts, it was Bill. And I may be wrong with that. And in some ways, I hope I'm not wrong, because if it was Elliot Wolf or Mark Grow, then we're about to have a few years of the same. if they're now in charge of that process.
This was supposed to be a really positive episode.
But the feeling is, like you say, Bill had too much power, but it wasn't. If he had been picking all the players that we wanted, we thought were the best fits for the Patriots, and we'd been successful, no one would be complaining about the power Bill has. It's the decisions he made with that power that are the problem.
It's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't have something but then complain when it doesn't work. It's not how it works, really.
That's exactly how it's going to work.
So anyway, talking about the press conference, because that's kind of what we were supposed to do the show for, really. A few things really stood out for me, and I will take them out of context, but try and explain the context as well. There was a couple of things that I found really, really interesting that were said for for different reasons. One thing that kind of goes on from what you were saying is how Mayo said, I think it's important. I think titles are important. And I know, no knock to Coach Belichick, who has been a huge mentor to me over the years as a player and as a colleague. What I would say is I believe titles are important, outward looking. So that really kind of goes on the whole not getting a GM, goes kind of against what he's saying, really. He's saying, I think it's important to, no, generally speaking, he's saying, I think it's important, because I know the question was asked, will you officially name coordinators? So they're basically saying, are we going to get an OC and a DC now, because we haven't really had one before? And I think that's basically him giving the positive of, yeah, I believe that these should be named. Maybe because he wanted to be named a DC a while ago when maybe he should have been, that sort of thing. So you never know if there's any internal barbs with that. But that for me could also go on the whole GM situation. Without not naming a GM takes away that he's sort of making an effort to emphasize.
No, I agree. You're right, and I hope they do name GM, whoever they think is best positioned. But what I don't like about it is they had this succession plan in place, like you say, for a year or more. Why are they now in a press conference yesterday sat there going, well, we don't really know what we're going to do. We're still looking at options. We're going to interview internally. We're going to look at external. Why did you not have that plan in place as well? Whether that was internal or whether that was going external. Like even if you came out and you said we will appoint a GM, I'd be surprised. It's been a week now already, which a week in football is a long time. Why are you still at the point of I don't really know what we're going to do? Why didn't you have that plan before you fired Belichick? And certainly in the time since, you've seen, for example, the Commanders have gone out and appointed a GM. They've gone and done it. The season finished. They're executing now. Now, to be fair, they've not got their head coach yet, because the feeling is Rivera's out. But they're executing. They're getting their GM done. Why are the Patriots not following suit? And I hope it's a move that if they are, like you say, if they are going to name a GM, and they see that as a title that's worth appointing to ensure that it's known who has what titles, then please do get on and do it. Make that focal point there.
It could be, not trying to give them a scapegoat, but it could be that it's an individual that is currently in the playoffs, because they can't interview anyone if the teams are in the playoffs, can they?
I'm not sure whether that still applies for GM. It might do.
Oh, okay.
And even that, I think after now they've had wildcard weekend, I think they can interview them.
Oh,
they certainly can request to, and it maybe they have requested to.
Yeah.
Maybe they have held interviews, and they didn't. The answers they got from the candidates weren't the answers they're looking for, and they've not made progress.
Sure.
It just, I hoped for a little more clarity on the direction in that front, and it felt quite wishy-washy listening to the responses yesterday.
One last point, and then I'm going to completely give the floor over to you. Another quote that I picked out from the presser yesterday was, and this is halfway down what Mayo actually said, I don't like echo chambers. I want people around me that are going to question my ideas, or yes, question the way we have done things in the past, because realistically, this game is a lot different than when I was drafted in 2008. And I've got to say, I picked that out because for me, I hope he means what he says. And it's like, don't look at what they say, look at what they do. So I know that, behavior explains everything. But I hope that he means that, because it's so key that it is a different game now. It is a different game than when Bill Belichick started. And just because the Patriots evolve into a team that's more modern, that's more plays the game how they play it now, doesn't mean that they become the same as everyone else. Doesn't mean they become mediocre or middling or whatever, even though technically they kind of are at the moment. But to embrace the change, to embrace the change of the modern football era doesn't mean you're the same as everyone else. Just because you look at the Shanahan offense or whatever doesn't mean you become the same as everyone else, because there's always going to be their own version of it. And for me, that gave me so much hope and just confidence in, I just hope he means it. And I hope it's not part of his speech to get everyone on board sort of thing, because that felt so key. That just one sentence felt so key of how it is now, and how we can look back and say, oh, but I want Brady back, and I want this back, and I want that player back. And it's like, we need to move on. and this indicates that he will. And for me, that was good. Now, some people will say, oh, that's terrible, or oh, he could just be saying that and not meaning it. And I completely get it. Don't get me wrong. It was just, as a fan, this fan here hung on to that and felt like that was great. Sorry, you go.
Well, yeah, a very, very slightly different take on that I would have, and this goes on to, or goes back to Kraft appointing Mayo in the first place, is the impression and the feeling I get, and that I hope is right, is that this is meant to be an evolution of the Patriot way. In as much as it's not saying that everything Bill did was wrong, we need to throw that out and we need to start again. We need to go on a new modern way of football. It's acknowledging that we were incredibly successful for 20 years.
Yeah.
There's a lot that was done right. But there's also quite a bit that we can do differently. Not because something was wrong, but because football's evolved. And not just on the field, off the field, the way players are managed, the way that the rosters are constructed is different. It's not just a playing style of passing, running, hard defense, whatever else, which we hope will change. It's there's a lot of change in football, and probably Belichick didn't evolve as strongly as most would like, which is why he's not here anymore. And it felt like Mayo was acknowledging there's a lot we did right, there's a lot we need to continue doing, but there's some changes we need to make, and he's open to getting input on those changes from all sources. And anyone can speak out, whether you were the last player picked as an undrafted free agent or whether you are a veteran Dave Andrews on this team. You tell me what you see and what can be done differently. I want to hear your voice so we can improve the Patriots. I'm not saying that didn't exist before to throw shade at Bill, but the feeling is that that's maybe not how things were done before, and that's the way he wants to do that. I think he even almost showed an example of that when he had the back and forth with Robert about race, and when the question was asked of hiring a black coach, and Robert said, "I don't see colour." It was just the best candidate for the job, and Jerod said, "No, I do see colour, and because if you don't see colour, you don't see racism." And it was contrasting takes that were both in the same direction, essentially. Of it doesn't matter that he's black, or it's good to celebrate that he's black. That it's not a problem the colour of his skin. He's a great coach, but it was celebrating it in different ways. But the fact he was in his opening press conference, he felt comfortable, convicted enough in his views to contradict what his boss, the owner of the team, had just said, to call him out on what can be a difficult subject for people to discuss. I thought was brilliant, because it showed that, no, you know what, we can have different opinions, we can talk about these things, we can challenge the status quo, and I thought that was really good. The one last comment I'll make before you can riposte is, when I said a evolution of the Patriot way, as Patriots fans, and there's obviously many who have been here for decades and saw us before Bill, before Pete, before the other Bill, Parcells, etc., before even Kraft, that have supported the team a long time. There's some who have come in the more modern era, such as yourselves. The one thing we had that was, or the few things we had were special, were our Super Bowls, were Tom Brady, the best player ever. Some people like yourself who love Gronk, the best tight end ever. We had the best coach ever in Bill Belichick. There was almost a sensation of feeling last week of, hang on, what makes us special now? We've lost all the things that no matter what fan of another team we were talking to, we could say, yeah, but we got Brady. Yeah, but we've got Belichick. Yeah, but we dominate the division. And a lot of those things are gone. Now, the one last vestige is the Patriot way. And we can almost now continue to hold on to that, with keeping Mayo there, with that continuity, with a boy, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but a young man, maybe is a better way of putting it, who came into the team as a first-round draft pick, grew, only played for the Patriots, went elsewhere to develop his business acumen, and then grew through the ranks of the Patriots coaching staff. That is a continuation of the Patriot way. That's what we can now define as the Patriot way. That's what we can hold on to as our identity of what makes us special. And I like that.
Well, to your point, as soon as you said it, the one thing that resonated in my mind is you saying what makes us special. And it's a very fan thing to say, but that's what makes us special, because we're the Patriots, and it doesn't matter if things are tough, if things aren't going well. That's what makes us special. We wear this with pride, and that's what makes you special. And yeah, the continuity of having Mayo keeps that, and it's very important. But even if they'd have brought in a different coach, that would still make us special.
The other quote, which didn't happen during the press conference, but afterwards when Mayo was answering questions individually and one-on-ones with reporters, and I do apologise because I didn't make a note of the reporter that asked this question, and you may well have seen the clip that's out there, but someone asked along the lines of, Mayo, you've got the third pick in the draft. How excited are you for that, And his response was, we're going to draft the best player for a position that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
You can put the pieces together. Which doesn't necessarily give you... You could point at probably three positions, wide receiver, tackle, and quarterback, that could apply to.
You're seeing it as quarterback because you want to. But it is the most important position on the field, really.
Well, I could take it as it's the most important position. However, the likelihood is, even in the best circumstances, you're going to be picking the second quarterback off the board.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't believe two non-quarterbacks are going to go before you. There's a chance, if some trades happen or whatever, that Williams might go first and Bears might take MHJ second. But I can't believe you're going to take the number one quarterback off the board, unless they have a strategy to trade up themselves and do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the confidence. I like the what they're looking for there. In reality, if you're saying you're taking the best position, it's more likely to be receiver or tackle, because then you truly can say we took the best available because you took the first one of those. But I'd love to think it's going to be a quarterback. So that leads me on to one question I was going to have for you. As we record these shows over the off season, certainly through till April, where I'm sure we'll get quite a few, we're going to look at free agency. We'll look at how maybe the coaching staff is being put together. We still don't know who's going to be DC, etc. So we can track this as different players are signed in free agency, as maybe different strategies appear, as maybe some moves are made elsewhere by other teams.
Mm-hmm.
As we sit here today, who is Claire? Who? I guess we could do this one of two ways. We could either say, who's Claire taking at 3, or who do you think they will take at 3?
Isn't it a bit early for this kind of stuff, really?
Oh, it's incredibly early. But the point is, we can change our mind.
Okay.
And we can change.
All I'm going to say at this point is, I think from everything that's gone on, from all the arguments that I have had, mostly with yourself, right now it feels like, and I'm going to back myself up with more information on another episode because we are really up against it with regards to time, is I think right now, today, 18th of January, it needs to be a quarterback at 3. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. So I'll go with Jane Daniels is who I want.
I don't think anybody needs you to say that. They all know. Everybody knows.
Nobody knows.
Everybody knows.
You're the only one I moan to, Claire.
Well, you've said his name already on this episode and several times on others. So if I had a sandwich for every time you said his name, I'd be so bad right now.
Yeah, we might be back to even. Right. Anything more you want to cover, Claire?
No, that's it. We're good. There was a lot in the presser that was really interesting. There was a lot that, yeah, I think we were both take away as good, and maybe a couple of things that weren't so good. We'll see. But I wanted to try and keep it as positive as possible because it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a Patriots fan. It's maybe concerning, maybe you're a little bit worried as well, but there's a lot to look forward to, and I hope that you look at it like that. As Chudders alluded to, we are staying with you, as we have already mentioned anyway, during the off season. We don't have a specific schedule, so it is best if you hit that subscribe button on the Pat's Propaganda YouTube channel so that you do not miss an episode of the fun and frolics that we bring for you as often as we can. But you'll also see on Twitter as well, so make sure you're following the Pat's Propaganda Twitter, tweaks, whatever you want to call it, feed too. So I think that is it for this episode of Pat's Procrastination, brought to you by the Pat's Propaganda YouTube channel. It is Thursday, the 18th of January, everybody. So let's have a good one, shall we? So as always, tune in next time and go Pats.
Good luck, Jerod. LFG.